Thanks for joining us Behind the Frontline, a podcast providing timeless solutions to everyday workforce and workplace challenges. Frontline Training Solutions is an express employment professionals company, strategically placed between the workplace and the workforce with professionals standing by, ready to combat your unique challenges. Learn more about what we do at frontlineon.com.
Well, welcome to another episode of Behind the Frontline with Frontline Training Solutions, and we are live right now from the International Leadership Conference 2025 in Dallas, Texas with Express Employment Professionals. And I'm sitting here with Nathan Leaman, our president for Frontline Training Solutions, and Matt Tibbetts. And Matt, why don't you introduce to our audience who you are, and then we'll talk a little bit about why we're sitting here with you.
Sure. Well, my name is Matt Tibbetts, and I am the franchisee of Waxahachie, Texas, which is about 30 minutes south of Dallas, from downtown Dallas, and I've been the franchisee there for 3 years now. But grew up in the express business. Started 10 years ago. This is my 10th ILC. And actually, it was really cool. I had a cool moment being out in the atrium, journaling the other morning, realizing this is my 10th ILC. So 10 years ago, as a 23-year-old, I was in the Gaylord, Nashville, and first time ILC, and going, this place is incredible. Like this conference, these people, like this business, I wonder what God has for me.
Yeah.
And to sit here 10 years later, 33 years old, and going, man, my life is just full of the goodness of God. We own this business. I have a wife and two beautiful boys. We are involved in our community, and so that's just a snapshot of my Express journey. And now owning a business and leading a team.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I had Matt introduce himself because I couldn't pronounce where he's from.
Waxahachie.
I said Waxahachie.
Well done. Yeah.
Waxahachie.
That's common. Hey, the first time we went down to Waxahachie, we did the same thing. We waited for the people that owned it at the time to say the name. Yeah. And we're like, is it Waxahachie? And we'll just don't say anything. And then finally they said it a couple of times, we're like, Waxahachie.
Let them tell you, right?
So just lean into it.
Well, Matt is a good friend of ours, and if you've been on any of our webinars, you might see him commenting book recommendations and different leadership points, and we wanted to catch him and just have a conversation about, what's going on in your life, what are you learning, what are you studying, and why don't you just kind of catch us up a little bit?
Sure. Well, one that we just finished as a team that I love is The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. We did it as a book study as a team, and so it's so fun. We just set up a little reading schedule. We read a section every 2 weeks and just digested it as a team, and we're able to pull out the principles. And really, the principles of Ideal Team Player, the virtues, Pat Lencioni calls them, there's 3 virtues, are in all of our core values. And we didn't steal the exact same words, although we do have be humble, that's one of them. Yep. But we have hungry inside of beat yesterday, and then we have people smart inside of second family. And so it was really important for me and exciting for me for our team to read the book together. Yeah. And then what was really fun is as we started to digest and do the Venn diagram, as Lencioni has in there, they started to identify team members who are no longer with us. And they're like, oh, because they were not people smart, were they? That's right. And this person didn't have hunger. That's right. And it's kind of, so how do we develop in that? And so that book is really a cornerstone. It's kind of like when you get core values, it's hard to explain what they mean to you. You join an organization, they hang on the walls, and it's like, okay, that sounds good. But when you have a book like that speaks directly to your core values, it tells the story, and then people can kind of buy into it. So it's actually required reading for onboarding. People read it in their first 90 days. Yeah. And now, but we hadn't always been that way, so this was the first iteration of the current team going through it, and now as we hire people, they're reading it. Yeah. The other book that we require is The Energy Bus. And we did that as a team last year. And so kind of had to get, again, 3 years into this business ownership thing, but first had to get the core values instilled into the current team and make sure we had the right team. We did Energy Bus together, and then when we completed that, we did Ideal Team Player. And now we're starting the culture is taking its own route. And then we're talking about now, the next person we hire, they got to have these values. And they're on it. Like the team is like, we love this culture. We don't want somebody to mess it up. So when we're hiring, we're going to be looking for, are they an Energy Bus person? Are they positive? Are they humble, hungry, and smart? And if they're not, we're going to get them out in the first 2 weeks. We don't want them here. Like these are not our people. They're not a we. They're bought in. So it's been a lot of fun. So that's a long-winded question of what am I reading right now, but we've just gone through that as a team, so it's fresh.
No, I love it. I love that you're investing in your team with these resources as well.
Oh, it's fun.
And if you haven't read the book Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni, you should. What threw me when I first read it, and I read it a few years ago, was the story in the beginning, and then the story kept going, And at some point, I'm like, when do we actually talk about the 3 qualities?
Is that your first Lencioni book?
Yeah.
That's his style.
That's just how he
so
does
he does,
it. Yeah.
he does a 75% fable.
Oh my
And then a
gosh. It was a good
25%
story.
application.
Yeah.
Yeah. It brings about. What I love about it is that everybody can read a story. It's easy to read. It's not. It's not like reading, Jim Collins, and you're going, man, this dude is an intellect, and I'm going chapter by chapter through a thesis.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're
he's better than
grinding.
that. He's got a lot of good content. I love Jim Collins, but Lencioni's so accessible because of his storytelling, and then you get to the application like, oh, I see that in Jill, and I see that in John, and you got the practical application from the story.
Why don't you explain a little bit about the ideal team player? Including some more of the 3 qualities: the humble, hungry, and smart, and then we can come back to, how has that impacted your team, not just you as a hirer, but your team and the way that they're operating.
Yeah. So the 3 virtues of the ideal team player is you've got to have somebody that's hungry. They have to have their own engine. They have to have their own work ethic. You are never going to be able to hold people enough accountable if they're not people that take accountability. I love that out of your session that you did earlier this year. That's been a highlight takeaway. But if they're not accountable type people, if they're not hungry type people, and what Lencioni says, the work ethic really starts at a young age. Early on, you'll find people are applying for jobs when they turn 15. They're playing sports and they're working really hard at their sport. They're playing music. They're working really hard at their work ethic develops early, or it doesn't. And as you interview people and get to know people, you can find out if they have work ethic. And if you don't have somebody hungry on your team, you end up with a slacker, and you're frustrated all the time with them, and they're not feeling good about themselves either. If you're a good manager, if you're not abdicating your management, if you're a good manager and you're expecting results, then there's just frustration. So you got to have hungry. That's hungry is first. You got to find out if you got somebody with work ethic. Everybody would agree with that. Makes sense. Number 2 virtue is humble. You've got to have people on your team who can take feedback and run with it. And we like to say, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So it's okay to fail and make mistakes. That's just part of life, but own up to it, and then be humble enough to receive the critical feedback and say, hey, I can do better. I can learn from this, and nobody's above anybody else on the team. There's nobody walking around with a sense of pretentiousness. It's not fun to work with. And the other flip side that I like that Lencioni brings up is he brings up a C.S. Lewis quote that says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Right. And so it's also bringing your best self to work with humility. So if you have a strength in sales, if you have a strength in connecting with people, if you have a strength in data, don't hide that or hold it back, but be humble enough to share it with humility. Don't think less of your skills. So we've got to have humility. And then the last virtue, the third virtue, is people smart. And he just says the word smart, but it's the ability to act around people and understand how am I being perceived, am I stepping on toes, just a common sense. And if people don't have a sense of people smart, what they end up doing is just making messes accidentally all the time. We've all probably worked with somebody before who just kind of say the wrong thing at the wrong time, and just like, dude, that was not appropriate. Yeah, like it's not necessarily totally off color, but you're like, you just don't have some social ability skills here, and it's holding you back. And so the brilliance of the mottos, I think everybody can agree with those 3 virtues, but it's the Venn diagram. And it's where they intersect that makes all of the difference. So I can break it down now or later, but when you get 2 out of 3, it's not a match. I got to just go there just a little bit. But if you get hungry and humble, but not people smart, what you got is somebody that really wants to work hard. They might receive feedback, but they're just always making messes. Right. And it's like, yeah, bless your heart, but we got to work on some EQ here. We got to work on some, and if they're receptive, you could actually save that person and work towards it, but it just gives you a lens to go, oh, we love them, but there's something missing. It's the fact that they constantly put their foot in their mouth. Yeah. Well, let's work on that. Or if you're hungry and you're smart, but you're not humble, Lencioni would call that person a skillful politician. They're very productive. They can fake humility. They're really cool. But at the end of the day, one call out, immediately if you have a skillful politician, they'll always deflect the blame. It's never their fault. They never take ownership. Oh, it's that I was dealing with the other thing, so I could never get that one done. We'll get it done. It's never, boss, is my fault, right? And so that's hungry plus smart. And then if you have humble plus smart. I'll finish the Venn diagram, and we'll start
this
pulling
is
this apart. But humble plus smart, and no hungry. Then you have a lovable slacker. A lovable slacker. So they're sweet. They're great people. They're your buddies. I mean, you could sit back and drink a beer with them, but they're gonna get nothing done. They have no hunger for the business. Their numbers are never there, but they're awesome. I mean, they'll come in, chat with you about fantasy all day, fantasy football, and they'll have a conversation. But oh yeah, I know you could do better. I take ownership of that, boss. I get it, but they're not people with a work ethic that can get anything done, and so it's just frustrating. You don't have an ideal team player. The ideal team player must have all three. Yep. And they're going to be force ranked. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has a 10 out of 10 on all of them, but they have to at least be in the circle. We can't be outside of the edges of where you just don't have that at all. So that's a high level view. There's more to the model that I just love, but it just keeps giving. It's a wonderful, simple, you can draw it on a napkin kind of model and quickly diagnose a team in another company, diagnose your own team, and say, where are gaps? Coach each other on it. I mean, the application goes a long way.
It's interesting. I had somebody ask me recently, who had the biggest influence on you professionally? And a lot of people have had. I've had great mentors, great coaches along the way, good managers that have helped me develop and grow. But I mentioned my dad, because the only advice he ever gave me when it came to my professional career was, always look for the next thing you can be doing. In my first job, I was a grocery bagger at a grocery store, and then I worked construction for a couple of summers in high school and college. And what he meant by always look for the next thing, don't just stand around. He's like, if something needs to be picked up, garbage on the floor, do something, show that you're taking initiative. And as you were talking, I was thinking, man, all three of those components were in that one piece of advice. Because you have to be humble enough to do the more menial things that nobody else wants to do, but they clearly need to be done. You know, you got to be hungry enough to say, I'm not just going to stand and lean on the wall and wait for my boss to tell me what's next. And you know that if you're doing that, being that proactive, you're going to have a positive influence on people as well.
Well, I think it's self-awareness. It's smart enough to go observe my environment. Nobody's telling me to do this, but I think it would be helpful.
I got to take action.
There's a sense of awareness that's like when people just simply don't have an awareness, they're like, oh, I didn't even see that. They're just kind of in their own world and just not caring for people, not aware of their situation, and that really doesn't contribute to a team player.
What I think is really cool too about what you were talking about was the application of these principles to things you're already doing in the office. And it reminds me of our upcoming webinar in April where we're talking about operationalizing culture, which is these things are important to us. How do we make them live in the normal day-to-day environment that we have? So you talked about applying it to your hiring. You know, I'm sure you're reflecting on and looking at it from a performance standpoint as well. How else have you seen embedding these principles into your day-to-day at your office?
I love that question, and I'm so glad you asked. So we had a consultant years ago when I worked in Tyler, and he said a phrase that always stuck with me. He said, let your core values live out in the hall and not just on the wall. So how do you get your core values to live out in the hall and not just the wall? And of course our core values are on the wall. You know, of course they're printed and placed places. They should be. But how do you get them to live out? So what he encouraged is to fill in the blank. I know we're living out blank, or your insert core value, when we're doing blank. That's good. And so I did this exercise. I know we're living out beat yesterday is what we call our core value. Hungry is that when we are a growth mindset, we're challenge, assume constraints, and we're always seeking to learn something new. So underneath each of we have 7, 8 core values. We have 5 sub-bullet points that we know when we're living it out. So that's all on a double-sided piece of paper that sits on my desk. And every morning we start our AM huddle with core value of the week. So we do one core value of the week. We start on Monday. Core value of the week is beat yesterday, and everybody says beat yesterday. And then I hand it to somebody and say, Nick, you read the first one. It's A, it's Monday. And you read, we're living out beat yesterday when we have a growth mindset and we challenge, assume constraints, and we never rest on our laurels. Okay, Nick, what does that mean to you? And you give a 30-second spiel on what that means to you? It's like, that's awesome, team. We're going to remember that we are people that beat yesterday. We're hungry. Let's get after it. So it's a 60-second moment.
Yeah, it's so good.
Every day of the week. And we have gone through all 8 values countless times in 3 years. And what's funny is the core value of the week tends to show up that week. Tends to be a moment like people first is one of our core values. There's always a person that is really a thorn in our side that week. It's like, the
really
core value of the
challenging.
week is people. Guys, remember, we've been talking about this all week. Honestly, a true confession, the other few weeks ago, our core value of the week was be a pro. Professionalism, urgency, and response. That's one of our core values. And one of the ways we live that out is we respond to all communication within half a day and set or reset expectations.
That's good.
And I realized that my email inbox was a day or two behind.
Oh boy.
And I went, guys, this one's for me today. I'm behind on my email communication. I'm going to get caught back up to be a pro and respond to everybody that's been waiting on me. And so it's just a great way just to weave it in and keep talking. And what's funny is it's taken several years for people to even hear it.
Yeah.
Now people say, like we talk about all the time, like people first, assume positive intent. I'm like, we weren't talking about it all the time 3 years ago, but we've been doing people first every 8 weeks for 3 years.
Right.
And now somebody says, oh yeah, we assume positive content. And it's like, it's way harder in practice when somebody does something that is not positive intent intended.
Right.
You gotta like lean into that in that moment. But that core value comes up, core value of the week. We talk about it 5 days that week on how we can live it out. And it really starts to get into the culture over time. Like another Lencioni quote, leaders more often than not don't need to be instructors, but need to be reminders. More often than not, we need to be reminded more than instructed.
Right.
So he charges leaders be chief reminding officers.
That's good.
So if you're sick and tired of saying it, maybe by that point, they'll have heard it the first time.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah,
And a friend
yeah.
of mine, we were talking about this. They own an office in Indianapolis, and he said, man, I was so sick and tired of talking about our core values. Every meeting we open the core value, And so I was like, you know what? I think we can take the gas off, the foot off the gas for just a minute on this. And he goes, you know what I'm gonna walk around and just ask people our core values. And he walked around and said, hey, what's our core values? And they're like, they got like maybe 3 out of 4. He's like, oh no. Okay, I got to keep at
That's
this.
right. You can't talk about it enough, right? It reminds me of an article, Harvard Business Review. I don't remember the name of the article, but the quote that stood out to me was, until you've talked about an initiative, a change, whatever, 3 times more than you think you should, you haven't even started talking about it enough.
So good.
You know, and of course it's super subjective, 3 times whatever.
Yeah.
But the point is, you can't talk about it enough.
Can't.
You know, so.
And I loved your question, how do you operationalize it?
Yeah.
Is critical because I think people work really hard at core values a lot of times. Like they do a retreat, they spend some serious effort and time and coming up with some really values that are meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And it goes in a drawer and goes on posters. And 6 months later, people have no idea. And so one of the things I'm just bent on is how do we apply this daily? One of my favorite all-time quotes, I got it on a pen engraved on my desk, is from James Clear. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So when I learn something new, I learn something good, I think about how to systematize it.
That's right.
If values are a good thing, how are we going to talk about it systematically? Daily, weekly, quarterly, monthly, everything. If we just having a goal to be a core value driven company is nice, but the system is where you're going to fall to, because what you are what you repeatedly do. So if you don't have a system to continue doing it, it's not going to take. If you have a mission statement that you love, but you never talk about it systematically, it's not going to take. So what's your system to talk about your mission statement? So our mission statement is, we exist to bring hope through employment. Every week, we look at the number of people that we have hired onto companies. We take an Express logo man and we write their name on it. So to say, Nic W. and or Nic L. What's
D.
your last name?
Nic
D.
D.
Man, I wasn't even close.
That's all right.
WD, whatever.
He's hired on. And
23 other options.
Z, X, right.
You'll get there eventually.
Nic D, he's hired on, we write on Express man, and then we put it on the wall, and we have a wall that says, we bring hope through employment. And so it reinforces it every single week. And when I walk into our office and I see that wall of people we've brought hope through employment, it carries me through some hard moments, carries me through some hard days. And I look at that wall and I remember that's a person, that's a name, that's a family impacted.
Right.
Our mission is to bring hope through employment. So it comes up so naturally now because it's systematized. Like that sounds like a dirty word, but it's actually really life-giving, and it's really passion-bringing, and it's really energizing to all of our team. And now people walk in like, oh, that's a lot of people. We're like, yeah, it is a lot of people.
Well, and I think one of the things that's challenging is it takes a tremendous amount of discipline. Systems take discipline.
It does.
So how do you stay, I mean, you're naturally a positive guy, it sounds like, but like, what's your approach to sticking with it, even though, man, it feels like we're doing the same thing over and over again? You've got those visual reminders that I think probably fire you up and give you the energy. But have you done anything else or learned any other ways to just keep sticking with it because you can't stop? You have to keep going.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think for one, I don't always feel positive.
Yeah.
I don't always feel good. In fact, I was sharing this morning in our prayer breakfast, I feel like every morning my heart wakes up as a functional atheist and is like dead and cold, like not loving life, not like, and for me, my daily routine is where I'm going with this, is my routine is to get into the Bible and read a psalm and stir my heart back up for loving people, receiving God's love, and getting my mind and heart right for the day. So that's a daily routine. And when I miss that routine, I notice the difference. It's kind of like the routine of brushing your teeth every morning. Why do we have to do that? Because even if you brush your teeth when you went to bed, your mouth wakes up smelling like death in the morning. I don't know what happens, but something dies in there every night. Yeah. So like, do you just ignore that and say, well, I don't feel like brushing my teeth today, and just be wafted around by feeling? Or do you say, no, I'm going to do a routine and routinely brush my teeth, routinely get my mind right, and Scripture talks about the renewing of your mind, and so it's a life principle. We got to renew our mind about what we're about, and routines build that, habits build that. Atomic Habits by James Clear, routinely doing things. So bringing that into the business world, it's putting it on the calendar as a recurring reminder, putting it into a recurring templated meeting agenda. Happens every time we look at the people who are hired. Every AM huddle, we look at the core value of the week. When I started a new thing with our team that we were going to start having quarterly conversations, which are one-on-ones that are different than tactical, but they're strategic. So we're going to back up a little bit. This comes from another book, How to Be a Great Boss by Gino Wickman. Phenomenal read. We talked about stepping back and saying, let's just talk about the quarter. How are you? What's going well? What's not going well? Because over 13 weeks, people drift. So let's zoom out. We're not going to talk about numbers and all that. We're just going to see how you're doing and culture and what do you want to achieve this next quarter. And a quarter from now, we'll talk about that. Did you get it done? And how can I support you? And it's a wonderful conversation. I really wanted to start it. I read the book. I fired up about it. And but I didn't know what to do. So you know what I did? I made a calendar invite that repeats every 13 weeks and invited the person. Well, guess who has to go now? So I don't feel positive every day. I don't feel like, keeping our mission in view every day. I don't feel like having core values every day. I don't feel like loving people every day. I don't feel like being kind every day. I don't feel like being other-centered every day. I feel like being selfish when I wake up in the morning. It's about me and my agenda and what I want to get done. If I want any of that in my life, I have to find a routine. I have to find a habit that, just like Jesus did, in the morning he got away and got his mind right for the day. He got his heart right. He had quiet time. And so building routines, structure, systematization into, and just building structure and rebar into habits and routines is really where the life starts to come from.
I like that you're almost taking on this role of like a cheerleader for your team.
Absolutely.
Like you were cheering them on.
100%.
You were supporting them in this process and, systematically putting this as a part of your culture. How important would you say, if let's say we have a leader that like, I love what he's saying and I want to implement this into my own team. I'm sure it's important to surround yourself with like-minded people. Tell us a little bit about your circle and just kind of, obviously, I don't know, maybe you did. Maybe you woke up one day and like, that's it. We're going to systemize this. We're going to put it in the calendar. So tell me a little bit about how you got there.
Well, I was looking for quotes the other day about how nobody succeeds alone. And Gary Vaynerchuk came up, the famous Gary V. And he said, quote, "Nobody succeeds alone. Nobody." So whether you're an individual entrepreneur, a small business owner, or leader, you've got to be in community. You've got to have a circle of support because nobody makes it alone. Gary Vee, to me, seems like the greatest kind of lone wolf personality. Like, he's kind of this just electric, eclectic kind of person. For him to say that is like, okay, like not even Gary Vee succeeds alone. Nobody. And so, so what does my circle of support look like? Again, systematizing it. So Tuesday nights is community small group with our church every Tuesday night. It's protected. It's that time. It's the other half of church to actually get in a living room together, share what we're going through, pray for each other, and lift each other up. Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock Central Time is my meeting with David Robb and Phil Powell. And we meet 3 out of 4 weeks a month, and we have a mastermind, and we talk about things on the table. So each person gets a week, so the 3 of us, and we talk about what challenges we're dealing with right now, what are some wins, and then one person's on the hot seat, and they bring a challenge to the table, and we all try to solve it together. Once a month, I have a repeating calendar invite to talk to my friend Brian Ballard. Every other week, I have a calendar invite to talk to my friend Kenny Reinbold. And I feel like sometimes when you're transitioning into adulthood, you discover that, wait a second, I don't see my friends anymore. And it's like, crap, we got to put this stuff on the calendar now. And then you realize, wait, this is, and then sometimes you get this feeling like, man, that feels a little cold. Like I'm scheduling friend time on the calendar. Like, okay, this isn't as cool as it was in college anymore. But then you realize the joy of being intentional and carving out that time. It's life-giving. So it's putting intentional time on the calendar and then living by it. Probably the best book I've ever read about that is Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt. And he talks about the power of using your calendar, time blocking it, and getting into that routine and planning for it and being intentional. But that's really, I think, coming back to your question of circle of support, I've had so many mentors along the way that have just fed me these books that have I have a mentor, Dr. David Neal, that I have to just give a shout out to that 10 plus years ago, I was in his executive track coaching program through a Christian nonprofit that I was at, and he took us through a year of reading book after book after book and had coaching meetings with us and just poured into us, and that just changed the trajectory of where I was going. And then learning from him, he would call it the 7x24, 7 days, 24 hours. What does your Excel spreadsheet of your life look like? What are you planning intentionally in it? When is your family time connect? When's your spouse time connect? When do you turn off work? When do you work out? Like, let's get these rocks in there. The pebbles fit around it and the sand and all the analogies, but let's make an intentional plan for your week, and then you're gonna start to reap the benefits of that. It's a system. And so we, just a classic Aristotle quote, mentioned it earlier, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. So if you want to be excellent at whatever life, whatever vision you have for your life, if you have a zest for it or a zeal or a desire to be excellent in it, then you have to figure out a way to habitually do that thing. You're not going to fall into excellence. You're not going to fall into an excellent marriage or excellent parenting or excellent workout routine or excellent health or excellent business. You're going to work at it through a system, through a habit, through a routine. And one of the reasons I love the book Atomic Habits is that he sets up habits as here's the goal, and then he breaks down how do you build a habit. And he's got 4 steps to building a habit, and here's how you can, if you have a vision to do something in your life, here's how you can get there concretely. And so with that, part of my habits, part of my routines is be in community. If I'm not in community, I'm going to fail. So it's going to get time blocked on my calendar. I'm going to talk to people, and I'm going to have space to be open, and I'm going to have space to be spoken into, and I'm going to have space to speak into others, so that it happens because it's necessary for the life that I dream of. So
when I think about when you think about getting this into the culture of your team and organization, what I'm struck by is how important it is it starts with the individual leader having discipline in their own life.
Love that.
You're not going to be able to take your team somewhere that you can't go yourself. My brother-in-law is famous for saying, unspectacular preparation leads to spectacular results. And what he means by that is the day in grind of disciplined action around simple things over time gets you to a place where you can achieve great things. And that means you got to wake up in the morning and do the things you're doing because I'm not feeling it today. And get your team in that space. You can't do it unless you are taking care of your own priorities and setting things for yourself so that you get there first.
Yep.
Because you can't expect them to go to a place you're not going yourself.
And I love that you said that. I think I think your question earlier is like if somebody is like thinking about how to get started, where do you start? I think a morning routine would probably be the place I'd start with anybody. I've got a young leader I'm mentoring right now in our office, and I keep asking him about his morning routine. I'm like, dude, if you're always just getting up last minute, throwing your clothes on, getting the kid out the door, getting you out the door, you're not walking in your best self. Mm-hmm. You need to carve out some time for yourself to get your mind right. Read a devotional, read the Bible, pray, like get like you need some space to think before you get into your busy day. And so and for me it looks like getting up, working out, and then getting that time in, and then getting my quiet time in, and then getting my son set up for school, and then all the little steps. But I just like being able to get to that point of having a morning routine sets up the rest of it. Yeah. But what you said is right. The first person to lead is the man in the mirror. Yeah. It starts with self-leadership, and until you're leading self, nobody else will follow, because it's evident that you're not leading yourself.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah.
We're way off track from Ideal Team Player, but
that's okay.
I think we're. I think it all relates, though. I love it.
I think that's quite all right. So I did want to bring it back to Ideal Team Player, because I do feel like it's such a good resource. And what I started thinking about, you said that you're, looking at your team and the qualities that they're possessing. And obviously, I don't think once you become an Ideal Team Player, that's it. You've won. Like, you're an Ideal Team Player for life.
No.
Yeah. It can change and fluctuate with your seasons.
You can slide.
You can slide. And, I start to think about, stay interviews and, how you can start to, as a leader, acknowledge some of these things in your team and help coach them through that. But Nathan, I was kind of hoping that you could share a little bit about our internal office. And speaking of core values, we recently decided to implement some of our core values into our performance review process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. So, the office has had some core values for quite a while. And when we were building out a performance process, we talked about how important it is to ensure that you have both the what and the how in the equation.
I like that.
So what are you expected to deliver? Your goals, whatever that might be, in everybody's team, individual goals, roll up to team goals and those kind of things. But the how is the values, how we expect you to behave.
How we behave.
Yeah. So, and the way we actually built it is that it's a 50-50 equation. You get 50% credit for the what, and you get 50% credit for the how.
Love that.
And what this forces is the real expectation that your behavior actually is as important as what you deliver. What we don't want is somebody who's exceptionally good at delivering the goal, but treats everybody really poorly, or doesn't exhibit the values that that are important to us. And at the same time, you don't want somebody that's just so aligned to the values, and you were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier, but they're just not delivering. Right? You gotta have both.
The lovable slacker.
Well, that's where I was going to go back to. Is I'm going to take you right back to Ideal Team Player again.
That's right.
So what Pat Lencioni would call the person that's all what but no how, that's all hunger, no humble, no smart. He actually has a name just to kind of give you a caricature, just to give you a picture. It's not about labeling people. You would never do that in real life. It just gives you a word picture.
Yeah.
The name for a person who's all hunger, no people smart, no humble, is the bulldozer.
Yeah,
they leave a trail of dead bodies behind them. They're super productive. They may hit all their quotas, but there is
I know
tension.
people I've worked with like that.
They're a bulldozer. It's like it's a trail of dead bodies behind them. So I think that's why, again, I could take Ideal Team Player and kind of overlay it in so many different things. So you take that and you're just like, well, what you're talking about there is you need somebody that's also people smart. You got how, and you got humility involved, which is maybe the king virtue of them all. If you don't have that, you really fall apart. But you've got to have both. We expect you to get some stuff done here. We're not paying you for a nonprofit status. We're getting an ROI here, buddy.
Yeah.
So we need you to get some stuff done. We need you to be hungry, and the way you go about it does matter.
Yeah.
It matters.
I worked at a cheese company in Wisconsin. Shout out to the Grande
I feel like
Cheese Company.
that story makes it into every podcast.
Cheese always
webinar
makes its way into our podcast. But something that they did that was really, really smart, they were talking about their culture, and they were talking about this issue of a really high performer that's not aligned to the values. They said, the test of our culture is what we do with that person. If we keep them around, despite their misalignment to the values, I mean, yes, you want to coach them, get them feedback, make sure they understand, but if they show an unwillingness to align to the values, the test of our culture is what we do with that person.
So Mike Weinberg is one of the guest speakers here this week, and he teaches about sales management. And I loved what he said. He said, if we don't coach up or coach out people, the definition is management malpractice.
Yeah, that's so
You are a malpracticing manager. Just go ahead and give up your license to practice management.
That's right.
Because you're allowing it to perpetuate. And to me, one of the things that has been really helpful for me, because I'm a people person, I love people, and to call them out on that can feel mean.
That's right.
It's like, I don't want to tell you, like, hey buddy, like, we're going to expect you to be hungry around here, and if you're not, and Pat Lencioni, I stole this from a podcast he shared, he said, here's how the conversation starts. Hey man, one of our values is hungry, and we're going to expect you to do that here. And if you don't want to, that's okay. You just don't have to work here.
Yeah.
And Brene Brown would say, to be unclear is to be unkind.
That's right.
And that unlocked something for me when it came to my empathy, is that I am not being kind to people to withhold feedback of where they're failing.
That's so good.
So if I want to be kind to people truly, I'm going to be clear. I'm going to be clear and kind and say, hey bud, you're missing the mark here. One of our values is this, and you're not measuring up to it. I want to help you.
Right.
Do you see it? Can you see? Let me share 3 examples with you. Because if you share 3, people can't get out of it. They can excuse away 2, but by the time you get to the 3rd, they're like, "You got me. You got me. I'm in." You know. And so here's 3 examples I've observed, and so like how can we help you? And if they're humble, they'll say, "Yes, boss." I've heard other people say that. I had a guy that we had on our team. And I was working with him on his customer service ability, and he really lacked people smart, but he just kept putting his foot in his mouth at different moments. So I sat down with him and was like, hey man, here's 3 examples about moments that are struggling. And he's like, that's funny. When I worked at Chili's years ago, I used to get surveys, and people would say, they always got my chips and salsa out, but never with a smile. So you know this about yourself.
Right.
Okay, so we're on the same page. We got to work on this.
Let's do something.
We're either going to coach up or we're going to coach out.
Yeah, I think organizations greatly underestimate the severe impact of not dealing with these things.
Ooh.
And because maybe I'm not comfortable with it as a manager, or they're doing such a great job, we can't afford for, and yet everybody's watching.
Oh yeah.
And they're starting to do their own math.
Yep. It's funny when we have gotten to that point where, and we're patient, and we kind of go through a 3-strike rule. Like, hey, we talked about it. Okay, now we're doing a written, and this is, we're talking about it again. And then this continues this way, then probably is not the right fit, and we're just gonna be kind of clear. Like, hey, everybody has a shoe size. You might be a 10.5. This job is at 11, and you're getting blisters. Let's just find you the right shoe size. So that's cool. Like, we can stay friends through this process. It's not about being mean to anybody, but it's just calling clarity out on the table, and through that process. But the funny part is, once we've gotten to that final step and had to release people over time, the rest of the team goes, dude, about time.
Yeah.
They're like,
exactly.
We were wondering when you were going to make the call.
So
like, we knew he wasn't. We were dealing with him every day, but. It only so much rolled up to you. You only saw this much. We had the iceberg under here that we were dealing with, but we're glad you finally made the call, boss. And so sometimes, you have to have the right balance of not overreacting to the same moment and just running around firing people,
That's right.
and being patient. And so I want to err in my leadership on the side of patience with people and grace and giving them the opportunity to rise to the occasion. So I'm going to err on that side. However, that does lead me to keep people probably a little longer than I should. So I'm trying to swing that pendulum a little bit to keep it on target and not, and like Lencioni would tell me, don't be a wuss. Don't be a wuss, because the first time you confront somebody on it is not the time they're going to hear it. And then the second time they do something, what I like to do is go straight to my wife and tell her what they did. And then the third time they do, I go straight to a coworker, another franchisee, and tell him what they did. And by the 4th time they did it, I'm getting real riled up, and they've only ever heard it once.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm a wuss, and I don't want to go tell them, like, hey, we just did this again. Like, we need to do it. And it's uncomfortable, because it's kind of like, you should be getting this. But then you start to find out, wait a second, I don't have a virtue here.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't have humble. Maybe I don't have hungry. Or maybe I don't have smart, and you just go right back to the model. You diagnose and go, okay, hey, we talked about this once before, and this is uncomfortable for me. We're talking about it again. And if we keep talking about this, then it's not the right fit.
Yeah, I love
so
that.
it's having the
really
courage
good.
and not being a wuss.
Clarity is kindness.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Clarity is kindness. And I love what you said there about being a friend through the process. You don't have to be mean. I can't imagine, there's probably some people who wake up and say, I want to be mean to somebody.
Somebody
Very
out there.
We've
rarely.
met those people.
They cut me off in traffic.
Exactly.
They're driving to Dallas.
But I
don't
want to
worry.
believe the majority of people don't wake up with that mindset that I want to destroy someone's life at my work today. So you can be friends through the process, but it's about being clear, about being kind. It's about having your defined values.
Yes.
And aligning your expectations with those defined values.
Yeah.
But just being clear with it. And I love what you said there.
Well, what you're touching on there is really important. Is you don't get upset with someone over an expectation you've never set.
That's right.
Oh.
So part of what you need to do to back up when you're upset with someone is like, have I ever set an expectation here?
Yeah.
If I haven't given them clarity on what I'm expecting and now I'm upset, that's just bad marriage counseling right there. I mean, that's what our marriage counseling. Hey, unmet expectations is a killer of relationships. How much have you communicated
That's
it?
right.
So it backs all the way back up to, wait a second, as a leader, I'm going to look first in the mirror. Have I been clear? Now, if I've been clear, and especially now in our onboarding process, I mean, people are signing off on the documents. Like,
For
this is
sure.
our values. Like,
You guys
this
are
is
talking about them all the time.
we're talking about it all the time. Like, there's no lack of clarity here. But I'll be honest, early on, there was times when, I'm upset with someone, and we had just bought the office, and things were still getting established, and I'm realizing I never even told them this before.
Yeah.
So if there's not an expectation that we're on the same page on, then there's a humility on the boss's side that says, hey, I have not been clear on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I apologize, and I've even let this go on for a little while. I had to do this the other day. Somebody was out of dress code, and I hadn't addressed it a week and a half ago, and I just went up to it, like, man, I apologize. I hadn't said this a week and a half ago. I just didn't have the presence of mind. I didn't address it, but I want to ask you about this dress code moment. And I don't like having those conversations. I don't wake up excited to have some conflict in my day about somebody being out of dress code.
Yeah.
It's not fun. But if I value and I have integrity to do what I say I'm going to do, and I said we have an expectation, and when expectation is not met and I'm the leader, then I'm the guy that's responsible to do the job. And nobody else picks up that baton. The leader does it. And here's what's cool, is you do it not out of a heart to harp on people or to ruin their day, but out of service. Because, again, to be unclear is to be unkind. If I allow dress code infractions to go on, I'm not being kind to them. Maybe they're not aware. The rest of the team is looking at them like, well, they're getting away with something, and Matt's oblivious.
Yeah.
So I'm not helping anybody in the situations. I have a heart of service, so it helps me reframe a little bit. Like, I want to serve this person well enough as their leader to get the gumption, to get the courage, to not be a wuss, to go say, hey man, that shirt, it really isn't in dress code. Let's review. Do you have any questions about it? I know we shared it with you early on. Oh, I thought it was. I get you. Like, we're just gonna change that over lunch. Come back and have the right shirt on. We'll be good.
Yeah.
That takes courage. It takes not being a
does take
wuss.
courage, yeah.
And it's setting the right expectations up front. And you just apply that into a million other moments in your day where, have my expectations been as clear as the dress code, or have they not been? And start there and then walk through the process.
Yeah, and I know it's, people who are listening are probably thinking about like, well, I really just want to be nice to people and love on them, but in reality, you are.
Yeah.
And you're setting clear expectations, and you're holding true to your
It's a true
expectations
kindness.
there.
Or you want fake kindness? You
Yeah.
want toxic kindness? I mean, did I just make that term up today? Like toxic positivity or toxic kindness? Like toxic kindness is like, hey, you look great when you've got lettuce in your teeth. Like true kindness is being the friend like, hey man, you got lettuce in your teeth, right? That's and man, it's just funny. I just chuckle at that sometimes because sometimes it's kind of, man, Nathan, you got lettuce in your teeth. I kind of feel bad about it, but it's like, oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Like I walked by Nick all day long. He hadn't said a word. How much does he really love me?
That's right.
Yeah.
Nick would never do that. He
No,
would
no.
he would call out the lettuce.
No.
I would call it.
He would. That's good.
Well, thank you so much. That was a great conversation.
Yeah.
It was fun.
So we talked about ideal team player,
Yeah.
energy bus.
Yeah.
You brought a couple other book recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to put them in the caption below. But thank you, Matt, for talking about this. And if you are interested in learning more about this book or any other resources and implementing that kind of culture within your organization, give us a shout at Frontline Training Solutions because we want to help you. And one of the reasons I asked the question of what's your circle of support look like is, like Matt said, you can't do this alone. And sometimes it seems like a bigger mountain to climb by yourself. But we at Frontline, we want to walk with you. We want to help you. We want to get you there. We want to get your team there to succeed and exceed expectations and become and stay employers of choice. So thanks so much, Matt.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much, Nathan.
Absolutely.
We are coming to you live from ILC, Dallas, Texas. See you later.
Howdy.